The space for civil society, including independent media in Hong Kong, has shrunk very rapidly in a short space of time. That has created a situation where many journalists have left the country. Some are, of course, still courageously trying to work within the country, but we've seen imprisonments and other forms of targeting those. So it's a very difficult situation at present. But it is encouraging to see that information is still getting out, that some reporting has begun from abroad in exile from some of the journalists who have left the country. We at Reporters Without Borders try to very closely monitor what's still happening there, including following the various legal processes of Jimmy Lai and others who have been targeted. But really this is also connected to China, and I think one thing that we work on is campaigning on this in a global sense to try to encourage other states to hold China and to hold now Hong Kong to account for their international obligations. For many years, China has been working not only to control information within its borders, but to export this model of information control abroad. We published a landmark report on this at Reporters Without Borders just in December that has a series of recommendations on what can be done to address this. We're seeing this very same pattern take rapidly hold in Hong Kong, but I think it's not too late. There's clearly the spirit of resilience and such a courageous media crowd that is still trying to report what they can on Hong Kong. So from our side at Reporters Without Borders, we're doing whatever we can to support those courageous independent media still trying to work. We'll have to consider in the future, I guess, what happens depending on political developments. But for this year, the two countries for sure are ranked separately. China has long been at the very bottom of the index. I think it's 6th from the bottom this year. But Hong Kong had the world's biggest decrease in the index this year, and that's just because of the very, very rapid nature of the deterioration there. So far they're still separate, although in our analysis, of course, we have to acknowledge the role of China directly in what's happening in Hong Kong. In the first instance, I think there are a number of journalists who have ended up unexpectedly having to longer term make their homes in other parts of the world, including a growing community of exiled Hong Kong journalists here in London. It would be fantastic to see more resources given to ensure that as many journalists as possible are able to still somehow work from abroad. As Chris mentioned on our panel today, many journalists end up having to do other things just to make ends meet, and that takes them out of being able to continue to report on the situation. So I think in the first instance, resources where possible to support reporting from abroad if some are able to continue to work. I think as well more resources maybe for digital security would be very helpful, because we know of the technical capabilities of regimes such as China, and I think anything that can be done to help equip those in exile to ensure that online that they're communicating in a safe way, especially within communities that may be targets. At the moment, they are separately ranked in our index, but I guess that would be something that we would continue to assess in the future going forward. But the two have always been in 20 years now separately ranked on our index. Well, 1 year ago when Apple Daily was forced to close, we marked it by holding funeral-style protests in Paris and Berlin. We actually carried coffins which read RIP Apple Daily, and how we communicated at the time was we saw it as the death of press freedom in Hong Kong. Certainly the closure of Apple Daily left a hole, and of course there are a few others still trying to report and new outlets that are popping up, including those in exile, but that was really a defining moment for the press freedom climate there, and unfortunately one that still continues to deteriorate.
321追新聞。